Well, if you haven't guessed it yet, we're going to be starting a new series, not only based off of the Bible, but it's actually going to be based off of small truths that we can draw from NBC's show The Office. I know it's a bit of a stretch, but hey, anything to keep things interesting, right? We are going to be kicking things off, and what better way to do so than by examining a character that I hold very dear to my heart.
Nope, it's not Ashton Kutcher. It's Kevin Malone.
If ever there was an example of poise, elegance, grace, charisma, it would be anybody but Kevin.
I wanted to eat a pig in a blanket. In a blanket.
Nonetheless, as I've said before, he is the one out of all the cast members that I hold dearest to my heart. And for very good reason. Over the seasons, we see Kevin's character sort of gradually transform from what is this kind of fully functioning adult, albeit a little bit slow, into what is essentially a kindergartner operating a grown man's body.
Who's been saying that there's another person inside of me, working me with controls?
Kevin is this bumbling, slow-talking, slow-moving, slow-processing, just overall slow person, both mentally and physically. He's the butt of many jokes that just seem to go way over his head, but one thing that I really appreciate about him is he's a really good friend, and really the only thing he wants to do is to do a good job. Though wisdom isn't necessarily one of Kevin's assets, there are these brief, fleeting moments where you can just tell that Kevin is on the cusp of discovering something or saying something so profound. We can see this specifically when we come to Season 8, Episode 2, where Kevin has an epiphany.
Me mechanic not speak English, but he know what me mean when me say car no go, and we best friends. So me think, why waste time say lot word when few word do trick?
Believe it or not, Kevin has actually stumbled onto an ancient biblical truth found throughout the wisdom literature of the Old Testament. It's summarized most concisely by Proverbs chapter 17, verse 27, which says, "A wise person uses few words." And while Kevin's application of this verse could not be more opposite than its intended meaning, he does actually manage to touch on one important truth, and that is that we often speak more often than we should.
He's making a statement. It's an ironic comment on our expectations of him. A funhouse image of our model of Kevin.
You keep think that.
It's true that as humans, we like to hear the sound of our own voice. We like to share our thoughts and opinions. We like to be heard. We like to contribute to conversations. And none of those things are really bad. These things are actually all really good desires. But sometimes we can get so concerned with getting our own thoughts and opinions across that we often fail to do two key things. Number one, to think, and number two, to listen. If you've ever read through the book of Proverbs, you'll realize how often this very subject is brought up. It's clear that God's desire for us is to be very careful about what we say. And this serves not only to benefit ourselves, but also to edify others. We live in a time where at any given moment we could say something or we could write something, and within seconds it could be delivered to hundreds, if not thousands of people. And we can't deny that it actually feels good to have that kind of a platform. There's all kinds of pressure for us to be consistently updating our statuses and to stay relevant, but things move so fast. And in our haste to keep up, it doesn't give us much time to really filter the things that we say. Likewise, anytime we are interacting with someone face to face, there's all kinds of traps that we can fall into that lead us to say things that perhaps we shouldn't. Proverbs 10:19 gets pretty blunt when the author says, "Too much talk leads to sin. Be sensible and keep your mouth shut." We're all emotional people. We have feelings. We get excited, frustrated, angry, scared, and we can be pretty well in control until our emotions come into play. When someone hurts us, we can be prone to being less considerate about their feelings. And all of a sudden our filter gets thrown away and we start to say things that kind of dig us into a little bit of a hole. When we're confronted, we become less respectful of the other person. And our fear might motivate us to assume the worst in someone. Our anger, it might cause us to do some damage in retaliation. Restraining our words is actually a true mark of wisdom and humility. Wisdom to be able to recognize whether what I'm about to say is going to truly add value to a conversation, and humility to be able to say, maybe this won't, and maybe I shouldn't say this thing, even though I really want to. In the most dramatic way, Jesus gives us an example of what it looks like to choose our words wisely. When he's being held on trial in Matthew 27, it says, "Meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, 'Are you the king of the Jews?' 'You have said so,' Jesus replied. When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, 'Don't you hear the testimony they were bringing against you?' But Jesus makes no reply, not even a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor." Jesus is in a room filled with people who are accusing him, attacking him, insulting him, and lying about him. And when our natural human instinct is to lash out or to return insults or to justify ourselves, Jesus shows true humility and just remains silent. Jesus is wise enough to recognize that these people, no matter what, are out to get him, and nothing that he can say or do is possibly going to change their minds. In fact, anything that he would have said would probably have just made things worse, by giving them more ammunition to use against him or to get him to trip up on his words, even though it's Jesus and he never would make a mistake. But anyway, that's more for us than for him. 2 Timothy 2:23-24 says, "Have nothing to do with foolish, ignorant controversies. You know that they breed quarrels. And the Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome, but kind to everyone, able to teach, patiently enduring evil." When you post online, when you have conversations with people in person, you have got to be so careful as a follower and representative of Jesus Christ that you choose your words so carefully. When we are thoughtful about what we say in conversation, we make room for opportunities for God to work, rather than becoming obstacles or creating obstacles for someone who otherwise might not experience him. Really quickly, I want to give you 3 questions that you can ask yourself anytime that you have the opportunity to say, write, or post anything. Number 1 is check your emotions. Is how I'm feeling going to be an obstacle for communicating God's love to this person? In other words, am I really in the right headspace to show compassion, gentleness, understanding, love, and mercy, and all of those things that we are called to show to people? And if not, how might I get myself there? Number 2, check your motives. Is what I'm about to share or post really going to add value? And is there a possibility that I might be sharing for selfish reasons? Even though if that's not something that you're doing intentionally, am I just posting to get attention? Am I sharing this just to seem smart? Am I doing this to be hurtful to somebody? It's important to be aware of these things. And finally, number 3, check your opportunities. Ask yourself, if I listen first, how is that going to stoke the conversation? Remember, discussions yield much better results than arguments do. If we can just bite our tongues and listen to the other person, regardless of how we feel about them, regardless of whether we agree with them or disagree with them, we are going to get so much closer to a better result than had we just gone all in and burnt that bridge. Another question related to this that you could ask yourself is there someone else who would benefit from sharing instead of me? This is an excellent leadership technique that can be used to help show people value, to help them learn, to offer new options and thoughts in the conversation. If you're somebody who knows all of the answers, consider humbling yourself and letting someone else speak, because really if you were going to say the same thing, it doesn't really matter who says it as long as it gets said. It's such an excellent practice to be able to just sit back and let somebody else share so that you're not the one who's just basically spewing out all of this information. People stay engaged when they get to share as well. So I hope you're able to take something away from this. I've got 3 small group questions if you feel like you want to discuss those in your small group that are going to be at the end of the video. And before we leave, I just wanted to make a disclaimer. I have not shown any clips from the Kevin's Famous Chili episode because I feel like that is a lesson all in itself. So look forward to that at a later date. We'll see you next time.